Hello, everyone.
Happy Thursday.
I was getting some kind of message there that I've never seen before, so I hope it was okay. I hope everything's good. Facebook has not been getting along with StreamYard lately, so some of our colleagues have had some problems. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed that everything is good tonight, right?
It will be. It's fine. It's gonna be fine.
So where do you want to start? It's exciting. It's our third Red Thread Collective episode, and we're welcoming a new member that you all met, Lori Osborne, who was on our Crystal Skull show about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So Lori is now a public member. We have a couple of research associates who keep things private, don't come on air. So we're excited to have Lori with the group tonight. It is the second anniversary of the passing of our dear friend, mentor, and publisher, Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Because we're on two radio stations, we're not going to take a moment of silence. But if anybody knew Rosemary, I'm sure you loved her. You knew that she was amazing. There's tons of her books back on the shelf. She helped us with things, including the big grant. We've mentioned that we've been working on a grant proposal for months and months. We sent it in today.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody keep good thought, because it could be good things for the realms and the threaders and all of that good stuff. So we are now going to roll the intro, come back, and dive into the mysteries of Antarctica. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Okay, and the chat room is blowing up here. So hello to Colette. Michael, hello. We're going to see Michael next month on the show. Hopefully be announcing some joint workshops we're working on, which is exciting. Good evening, Ronald. Hello, Michael, Mona, Jessica. Thank you for congrats Jessica on the grant submission. Keep good thought for us, please. Angelini. Angelini. I got my Italian on tonight. Angelina, I hope you're doing well, our friend. So we got a lot to cover tonight. So first, what is the Red Thread Collective if this is your first time? This is our third show. We came out of the gates with the Georgia Guidestones and the Denver International Airport. We followed up with Mysteries of Nevada and New Mexico. So all that good UFO kind of stuff. Well, what is the Red Thread Collective? The Red Thread Collective is our team of investigators who research and evaluate fringe theories with the same skepticism and extensive toolbox that we use for our paranormal field investigations. Now, you should know that everyone works independently. We talk to each other very little. If there's some kind of amazing documentary or find, we might say, hey, you really should check this out. But Craig Ansel from Three Beards podcast, one of the members of the team, is going to share something tonight that none of the rest of us found. So that happens too. So this is way more unscripted. That's typical for our show. So we're really excited. So with that, let's bring on the team.
Let's do it.
Hello, Lori.
Hello, Lori.
Hello, Emily and Devin.
Emily and Devin.
Hello,
and
Mr. Ansel of Three Beards podcast.
How are you?
Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to throw out some geographical facts. Many of these surprised me during our research. Then I'm going to turn it over to the team and go, hey, what are the exciting things that you all found the last 3 months working on this? So Antarctica, about 120 million years ago, it was tropical. That's what more traditional science says. 32 million years ago, it broke off from a larger continent and it moved south. But some people in the fringe say that it could have been temperate as recently as 13,000 years ago. If you think about the fact that some people now are saying that the Sphinx is 35,000 years old, that is pretty interesting to me. Now, it's twice the size of the contiguous United States, so it's pretty darn big. And the South Pole is technically a desert because it gets less than 1 inch of precipitation a year. So that ice, folks, has been there for a really long time. And it is technically different than the North Pole, which is made up of ice. It is typically a continent under glaciers. And under the surface of that continent is some really crazy geological and otherwise stuff, which we're going to be talking about tonight. So team, I'm going to turn it over to you. Who wants to start? Who's got something juicy about Antarctica to set us off?
It's cold.
Very cold.
Less cold than it used to be. Not to be political. Less cold than it used to be.
That's it, folks. That's it. It's cold.
There you go.
Thanks for tuning in. Yeah,
it's darn cold. Pack some extra underwear. Or underwear, depending on how you roll.
When do you guys go? Well, I said I'll chime in. Like I said, mine's going to be for a little later in the show. We're going to tease.
Craig, you got a fangirl. We got a woot. We got a woot from Mona for you.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for tuning in, Mona. Appreciate it.
Come on, guys. Anybody want to start us off? Don't make us do it.
Am I the only one who was surprised by how much there was about Antarctica, that weird stuff that I didn't realize existed was out there? I could not believe just the vast amount of weird things that happen there and things that are found there. So I was surprised by how much material we came away with. I feel like it runs the gamut.
And they keep a great lid on it, and I feel like it's great fodder for the RTC team because there's all kinds of ways to debunk it. There's all kinds of ways of going, no, that didn't really happen, and that thing is a lie. And just because he was an admiral and he said he got abducted to parallel dimension in his private journal does not make it so. So a lot to cover. So, Lori, I'm going to pick on you. What do you got to start us off tonight?
I thought it was interesting that as Americans, we can travel to Antarctica, but we can't necessarily go anywhere we want.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to have your plan in, and you have to tell them what you want to do and where you want to go and why.
Yeah, it's a highly controlled space, which makes it very interesting because when weird stuff happens there, rules get broken, people see things they're not supposed to see. Buzz Aldrin, did he really get altitude sickness, or did something else happen? I mean, it's crazy, the level of mystery.
I remember it was 2016 when he was there, and I remember seeing it on the news, and I remember thinking, what is he doing there? And then it got even more suspicious because he had to be airlifted out and go to the hospital. And at the time, I remember reading that they didn't know, and that could be a false memory. I should have looked into that before the show tonight, and I forgot to do it. But I actually remember reading in the news when he was at the hospital that they didn't know what was wrong with him initially. Do any of you guys remember?
No.
I don't remember anything coming out from his hospital stay, anything definitive. That was in New Zealand, right?
It was in New
It
Zealand.
was in New
where,
Zealand.
let me see, when was that? What did they see? Oh, between 84 and 87, there was a rescue mission for a group of scientists, and they were flown after being confiscated at McMurdo, right? McMurdo is one of those, along with Amundsen Scott, is one of those interesting places with an interesting history. They were transported. They had been missing for 2 weeks. Now, okay, it's as big as the contiguous U.S., so that could happen. They were told not to talk about where they were and what they experienced. Their gear was confiscated at McMurdo, which is interesting.
Right.
And they were flown to New Zealand, I would presume, to the same hospital where Mr. Aldrin was. Now, he was visited by members of NASA. Do you guys find it really interesting? Maybe I'm missing something, but NASA is so heavily invested in Antarctica.
Absolutely.
They spend big money there.
Who was in charge of NASA when it was founded?
Mr. Werner von Braun.
Yeah, and then there's a segue. Who is he also associated to prior to coming over to NASA?
Yeah.
And this segues into some of the things that are reported to have been down there that Project Highjump encountered, and that's what I was saying. So I agree. I mean, I think that's why NASA is still involved. Is I think there's still connections down there to this.
Do you want to talk about Nazis? We will talk about Nazis now.
Yeah, and that's
right.
I think that's I really think that's why not to let you get back to what you're talking about, but I believe that's why NASA still has such a heavy thing in there. Is I think through that it just kind of infiltrated in. I mean, we've gone through as we go through these things. It seems it's pretty amazing the Nazi scientist connection that a lot of these things have, where somebody was connected with somebody that's now headed up this organization that is heavily funding this. And then when you get through there, you're like, man, this all goes back to the end of the war. They just spread out and just, yeah. So there, I'm done derailing. Go.
No, I think that's railing. I think in some ways that's either the red herring or the golden ring or the brass ring. So let's talk Nazis. Anybody got anything on Nazis?
Well, the symbolism that was found on the door to the big compound that was gone through, of course, the black sun and the SS symbols and the lightning bolts, and that all goes back to the Nazi symbolism.
I don't want to say I was excited about that, but in my fiction, I'm doing a lot of work about the Nazis and all because they're great. They're great for story. They're amazing. Yeah. And so Himmler and the high-level SS at Wewelsburg Castle, that's where that black sun was. It's in the floor there in tile. That was like their ritual command center. Also, Craig, if you remember, when we first watched Linda Moulton Howe's documentary, which, folks, it stresses credulity. Which I think, that's what we need. We need to be really, really skeptical. But it's called Antarctica: Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice. I think it'll cost you $5 to watch on Amazon. It's worth it because they have an ex-Navy SEAL and they have an ex-Marine, and they say some wild, wild stuff. But they're talking about those symbols, Lori, that you're talking about. Some look Mayan, some look Egyptian, but some really look like the Norse elder Futhark. Right, which we're intimately acquainted with, Craig and I, and actually each member of our team has their own Futhark. So when those came up in those pictures, and that makes total sense because the Nazis took, I believe, the SS symbol, that sort of lightning S, is from the Futhark or old Nordic ruins.
So. And then kind of like that, just real quick, through. That's one of the rumors too. Like when you get into theories and stuff, that's always been Antarctica is the rumored Atlantis. Yeah. There's always been like Atlantis is there. And if this was the case, like, we can go through whatever you want, it'd take forever to go through all the theories. But if Atlantis did have this advanced human civilization, this technology that somehow was there, and if some of this was buried, wouldn't this have been what Hitler and the Nazis were looking for? They were looking for that key, and if they found this, these symbols, like we said, you see all these artifacts. Well, Atlantis and some of these things was always rumored to be the cultural centers. Like everybody went to these places, through trading. So it would make sense that you would have these different things. I mean, we kind of talked about the Georgia Guidestones. Why do they have all these weird, like, it'd be that type of thing. You'd definitely have, like when you go in an airport and you see all the languages on the board, well, it makes sense to have Egyptian, the Norse, language, because when people travel there, you're like, okay, I need to get, where's the city center? Oh, there's the rune, follow you follow the rune, which way to go. And that's what I'm wondering, if that wasn't the case, of why we're finding some of these symbols and why they weren't adopted, because they're like, well, this must be important if it's here, so let's use it. Power.
Do you know who was a huge proponent of the Atlantis being an Antarctica theory, which I had not heard that prior to doing this research? So I was surprised.
I actually had not either before doing this research, and I was actually really excited about
But do you know who was a huge proponent of that theory? Werner von Braun, yeah.
See, there we go.
I got it in my notes, so it must be so. But so it keeps coming. It keeps coming back.
What if it wasn't a theory? He was a Nazi scientist. What if it's not a theory? What if this is just, hey, I've got a theory. That's like the old joke. I'm asking for a friend. And so it's that's what, as you said that within. I wonder if it's more that's the thing. It's like he's using that. Hey, I've got a theory that Atlantis might be under the ice. That's I don't know. I'm kind of lending a little more credibility that there might be something to this if he's definitely behind it.
I'm convinced that Plato did not make it up as some kind of teaching tool or metaphor or cautionary tale. The detail is so great. What's weird is that it could be so many places in the world. But I'm thinking that Werner von Braun kind of pulled a Giorgio Tsoukalos, and he was like, "We think that it's there." No, yeah, it is. It's really there, yeah. So I have really mixed feelings about von Braun, right? He was made such a superstar and brought over paperclip. Craig, you were talking about disseminating. The Russians took some and we took some, thousands who have now, under assumed names and really good paychecks, created families in pockets of the country that correlate to certain values, ideas. That's mind-blowing when you start thinking about a diffuse sort of continuation of the Nazis, right?
Yeah, because if you want to keep winning, why not go to infiltrate all the sides?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's classic Illuminati, New World Order.
Whatever weapons dealer movie you watch, you always sell to both sides.
Yep.
Because you always win, no matter what. You're making money. So why not send people to the Russians, people to the Chinese, people to the Americans? Because you got it on all sides, and they're working together. You guys think he's like, I've got the advantage here. Not really. I mean, they're there intentionally, not accidentally. So yeah.
So this idea of Antarctica being a trade route, I think what we're going to do is keep coming back to this Lytton and Moulton Howe and these really two interesting guys. So they started by talking about a treaty that was signed in 1959. It's a real thing, right? This is not a fringe theory. It's called the Antarctic Treaty Coalition. It was originally signed by a dozen countries. It now has 54 signatories. But these guys say exactly, Craig, what you said. It's a trade port, but it's not just a terrestrial trade port. It's an interstellar trade port, which brings us into a whole nother level of weirdness, stargates and so forth. Everyone is shocked.
Isn't it said that that Antarctica has portals to other significant places around the world, like to Egypt? There's a bunch in Argentina, which I find also is interesting because of Hitler. After he, one of the fringe theories is that he didn't actually kill himself. He escaped to Argentina. And I think from that documentary, it said that there were allegedly four portals from Antarctica to Argentina, which seems highly suspicious, considering Hitler and the Nazis' ties to both Argentina and Antarctica. So I think that's significant.
That's right. So according to my overall notes here, where are these stargates? They are in Alberta, Canada, South America, Now, okay, Canada is coming out with more and more disclosure. More and more high-level people in the Canadian government are saying there were bases here. We had negotiations. So, okay, so far so good. South America, total hotbed of UFO activity. I mean, come on. Egypt, right? So then you got the pyramids, you got the alignment with Orion's belt and all of that, and the mystery of the Sphinx. Australia, which I know woefully little about as far as their UFO experiences. And then Argentina linking to Antarctica. That is cool because the great debunkers of the Nazi narrative say the timing of the U-boats 530 and 977 for people playing at home and doing their own research. They, let's see, on the morning of the 10th of July, 1945, German U-boats arrived in Argentine naval base at Mar del Plata near Buenos Aires, supposedly bringing Hitler, Eva Braun, Martin Bormann, and others to land them on the coast of Patagonia or Antarctica before going to Argentina. But the debunkers say, no. At that time of the year, it's deep winter. The ice is too, U-boats were not sophisticated. They'd be crushed like tin cans. Hey, if you got a portal 2 miles below the ground, which seems to be, have you guys found that? 2 miles below the surface seems to be a common thread.
Yeah.
No matter where you go and what piece you're looking at. It's like 2 miles below the ground, there's weird crap happening. 2 miles below the ground, there's a 60-acre building. I pay attention to that stuff, parallels and patterns.
And that's kind of where, when you started off, you're talking about the snow level that comes in. Like we're talking like, an inch of snow a year. So how do you get this mass quantity? Well, that kind of also lends a little credence to the thought that this continent used to be at another location. So if this had been in another area, you'd get a lot more snowfall, so it would be as it's moved in this position, but that would also account for why there's probably so many different things. Like I think we'll get into it, I'm sure, here in a little bit. The mountain range that just really amazingly has perfect pyramid sides,
Yes.
but it's a mountain. I'm like, if there's anything that anybody knows from science, nature abhors straight lines. So the odds of nature creating, a perfectly, shaped one like that is really, really crazy. I mean, I've got a rock that's, close to a pyramid shape, but even that's not perfect. But this one, it just happens to have that four-sided, and it's really, really interesting. So yeah, when we get into that with the stuff that you have these features, so it'd make a lot more sense if it was somewhere else. It could definitely have had that civilization built these things, just like the pyramids in Egypt, and then it has moved over to this way and it's been buried by snow, kind of like the Saharan Desert. I believe there's something under there.
The Sahara Desert. Yes.
Yeah, we just have to get the sand out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's another show. That's for another show.
I believe that it was 1939 when someone first flew over and said, "Hey, there's a pyramid down there." But of course, the scientists are saying, "Oh no, it just looks like a pyramid, but it's not." So pay no attention to that pyramid over there. And apparently, have you guys seen any of the Google Earth pictures of really odd structures? And they look like some little airbrushing has been gone on there, which is an interesting effort to make. So,
and then there's the big basalt face, right? That they found.
Yeah.
The Chinese kind of like carved face that's over half a mile in size.
I think that's the name of that was Peak of Omok, I believe.
Nice.
That pyramid, I think it was the Peak of Omok. And it's in what they call the Pyramid Trough. It's Kotlitz. I mean, I think that's Glacier. I think I'm like butchering that name, but it's down there. And this was a long time expedition, so this isn't something that was a new like Google Earth discovery. I mean, this has been known for quite a while, but it's just as photographs and things have been getting better. But yeah, it's just one of those. Anybody can go the Omok Peak, and you'll see. I mean, you can as you're listening to us, you can look at the structure and you can see these are some pretty distinct, sharp edges. I mean, this isn't. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
That basalt face is at the Admiralty Mountains. So it's kind of in the northern part. Well, if there's a northern part. Everything's northern, right?
Right.
I don't know what I'm saying.
Ronald asked, would that be one of the wonders, but they did not include it in the list. 1/2 mile wide, I think so. And you know what? In October, we're going to have a guest on the show, L.A. Marzulli. He's very well known for his work on Nephilim, as they're tied to the Ohio mounds. This man, I'm reading his first book, and we're going to deep dive into his 9 documentary series, The Watchers, has done so much research. So much of this is about scale. He brings up the Nazca lines, rightfully so. You can only figure out what the hell the Nazca lines are from outer space. You can really, a big elaborate crop circle, you can only really appreciate from the sky. A 1/2 mile carved face, right? Which brings us, at first I dismissed this. It was in my notes and I was like, I don't really think this matters. But then suddenly it mattered because I found in some other research, the Peary-Reese map. So there is this highly, highly detailed map that was in the possession of an Ottoman admiral in 1513 of all of the features of Antarctica. The official story is that Cook was the first one to map Antarctica in 1773. That's a big difference, 260 years. And it is so incredibly detailed that it would only be like if you saw it from the sky. Why would it matter about the pyramids in the Mayan pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids to be aligned with Osiris if you couldn't see them from the sky? So odd.
Right. And that map is also interesting because Antarctica is not where it is today. It's closer, I think, to Australia, right? And kind of up in there, and a slightly similar shape, but slightly different. And so there's 2 pieces there. One, how do they know what that looks like if no one had, discovered Antarctica until 200 years later? And why was it up in a different spot than it is today? I mean, it lends itself to that theory that it has moved and it was once very different than how it looks today.
And he admitted, too, that map was cobbled together from maps that were even older.
Yeah, right.
He referenced older maps to create that master draft.
Yeah.
Right. So Ronald asks, has Antarctica always been in the ice? Exactly what we're talking about right now, Ronald. Some theories say it may have been temperate as recently as 13,000 years ago. Folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are the kinds of things that Graham Hancock is really talking about. That these major events happened more often and in different ways than the book. These people are really bringing out same thing with Marzulli. Where are all the giant skeletons confiscated by the Smithsonian in the late 1800s? Maybe dumped in the bottom of the sea, like this gatekeeping is nuts, right? And our grant work that we just did, it's like scientists want to go, no, consciousness is local. Memory resides in the brain. There is no life after death. The tunnel is just some kind of oxygen deprivation. We're just finding it everywhere. So anyway, did you know that there was a Mars rock recovered from Antarctica?
Yeah.
Which
Mars
happens.
I mean, just a stray, astronomical event just happens to land in one certain spot, just a rock. I mean, just random Mars rock. I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too that they're trying to prove that there's life on other planets like Mars through microbes, right? And they're saying that the ice and everything has their own microbes. But did you know there was a report 2 days ago where they found, let's see, where was it? It was at the Shackleton Glacier. Completely, they took all of these samples, completely devoid of microbes.
Wow.
Nothing. So then they're trying to compare that. Well, they're trying to say, well, it's because it's so cold, it's so arid. Well, then they're trying to say, well, what are you going to get on these other planets? So it kind of upsets the rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lori's picked our November 11th episode, which is going to be Mysteries of the Moon. why the heck go to Mars when you got the moon right there? I am not understanding that. I don't know. I mean,
I am in agreement.
But something to tackle in November. Like, is it a far too hostile environment? Are they divvying up? You know, because China right now is doing a lot of stuff on Mars. So have some deals been made? I don't know.
I mean, in the early days of the space race, that was the thing. Like, whoever gets to Mars first is going to colonize it. And then they get there, and then they're like, okay, no reason to go back. I mean, it's just weird.
You mean the moon?
The moon. I'm sorry, I said Mars, but I meant the moon.
Yeah. Maybe because...
Spoiler alert. That's a spoiler alert. No, she just said what's going to happen. She says a spoiler alert. You know, there's nothing to see at Mars. We're not going back. I said, she told the future. Spoiler alert.
We have a friend who's a very sane person who says they've traveled back in time to witness Elon Musk's colonization of Mars. That's what she tells us.
Not
that he's the one who's
incarnated backwards. So she's reincarnated from the future. She came back to this time to witness Elon Musk.
Because he's going to be I guess there'll be a statue of Elon Musk on Mars someday. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I want to talk to this person, and I have a lot of questions.
Oh, Lori, you know her, and we'll totally hook you up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We can make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. And it's very provocative.
It is. And hey, as a hypnotist who takes people on past life journeys, you know, it's not always just about being in the past. Sometimes people are in, you know, places that look like other planets and, you know, all kinds of things. So who's to say? And time's not really linear anyway. We know this. And I've thought this for a long time. Why couldn't you incarnate at any point in time that you wanted to? Why does it always have to be in the future? I don't think that it does. I think you could go backwards.
Wow.
Yeah, who's to say? Up in the ether, if all the pieces are there.
Yeah.
Right?
It's kind of like looking down on the timeline, like when you're in it, you're in it. But if you were to, you know, be above, outside the confines of that, you could pick any point on that timeline that you wanted.
All you need is a DeLorean and X amount of gigawatts, and you can do whatever the heck you want, man.
Hey, we know of a DeLorean somewhere in West Virginia.
Oh,
there we go.
If it's owned by this person, this could be another Red Thread episode. I love this. This is so different than our typical fare. Our typical fare. What the heck is that?
So sophisticated.
Yes. So what was I going to say?
Back from 5 minutes ago.
Here's what I think. I think that we're at a third of this episode already, and Craig, I think you got to hit us with your. I think you got to hit us with your thing, man.
Are you ready for this?
I'm not, but I'm taking notes.
Okay.
I got my field book here, guys. I take this seriously.
All right. So we got to follow along here. Okay. So here's we'll start with a little. You should see my screens here. I've got them all popped up.
So show and tell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I've got one thing is just I don't want to make people dizzy. I mean, I could turn the camera around and show these things, but we're going to start with the little history between the Ark of Gabriel. There's a similar object, you know, obviously everybody knows about, you know, Ark of the Covenant. Well, the Ark of Gabriel is said to have been tied and imbued with part of Gabriel's angelic essence. His was put into this, and it was placed down on this planet as basically it's almost, from some of the research I've had reports to where it was kind of like a fail-safe. Like if things got out of control, this would trigger. And anytime this device has ever been encountered, it causes absolute havoc and chaos. It's not a religious, like a holy one, like, you know, you feel this brace. This is one. I mean, it's a for all and better, it's an angelic weapon, for, you know, a bomb, you know, just So I would liken it kind of the way when they opened up the Ark of the Covenant in Indiana Jones, how that force that just came out of it. That's I can't remember who mentioned that. And I was like, that's actually a pretty good thing. That's what, when that touches, that's what happens. Well, we'll do history. Does anybody remember back in 2015 and in Mecca, there was a crane collapse? It was fairly large. It was the Mecca. It was in. My Arabic is not good. I think it's Masjid Al Haram in Mecca. What it did is, this was a crawler crane, and during construction, this crane suddenly encountered extremely high winds, up to 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds, and collapsed. And during this time, it killed 111 people, injuring 394 people. Wow. And that was on September 11th. And during the construction here, the rumor was they encountered an object during this construction while they were working on here. And not even 2 weeks later, almost 2,400 people are killed in that stampede in Mina, Mecca. And that's less than 14 miles away from this location. So there was rumor that it was potentially, whatever they found was kind of being transported, and this caused this issue. Well, then what happens, and this is where some of the really weird connections come in, is on November 6th of that. Let's see, make sure I'm not missing any of the dates. So November 6th of that date, a Russian naval vessel departs out. It's from Kronstadt to head to the Antarctic. It's the Admiral Vladimirsky, and its first stop after it goes through the canal is Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And this is on the same stretch. If you look at a map, you've got Mina, Mecca, and then straight across is Jeddah, the port. So this Russian naval vessel ports is right there. Well, at this same time, when you start doing these timelines, now does anybody know who the Patriarch Kirill of the Russian Orthodox Church is? Mm-mm. He is their Pope. So he is. Once you see him, it's iconic look. I mean, you'll recognize as soon as you see it, you're like, okay, I've seen this guy before. But he is incredibly close friends and allies with Vladimir Putin. He's tied to him, and at the same time, and make sure I've got this date here, in February of 2016. So we got September 11th, 2015. This chaos erupts in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia. Now, 2016, the Patriarch Kirill, with the blessing of Vladimir Putin, departs for a journey to Antarctica. And if you can make it out, that's
yes. There he is.
Oh, yeah, yep. There he is.
Yep, that's him.
Everyone.
And so he embarks on a journey. He's on his way to Antarctica. Well, he stops at the same time. Now, him and the Pope are having a historic meeting that's 1,000 years coming. I mean, it has been a long time since the Vatican and these two versions, of the church leaders have met, and so this has been a long negotiation. So now they're suddenly in the same location. They're in Havana, Cuba, with a summit. Well, after this summit, the Patriarch Kirill, he departs and heads to the Holy Trinity Church, which during this time there is a reported object that has been offloaded and that has been stored for protection at this church. So the rumor is, like that Ethiopian church that is rumored to house the Ark of the Covenant, this one is rumored to be housing this Ark of Gabriel, that this artifact is now under the protection of this church, and that's there. And so you have, and then as you go through these, and some of the weird things like the chaos that's around. So, dates are kind of, September 11th, 2015, they have the collapse. So, the September 11th is kind of weird. But the construction company that was involved in this was the Saudi bin Laden group. And that is the father of Osama bin Laden, is the founder of that group.
Wow.
So even this, this construction, so this is tied to the Saudi government. So now you have a Saudi government contract to this family. They're digging, they find something, boom, chaos erupts. That's the Ark of Gabriel. That has, anytime this is encountered, chaos erupts. Now so you have all these chaotic situations. It gets taken out of there, and now it gets taken to Antarctica. It's who's going to notice a blizzard? I guess it's just during the research of this, I didn't realize this. I don't know if it's a common occurrence, but the priests that stay there, they say that rain will travel upwards due to the winds. So because of the storms, it'll hit horizontal, but they have to research because the rain will actually go up. And so I don't know if this is a common occurrence or if this is just something about their location. But if that's something about their location, it's kind of weird that it would be here where you would have this strange anomalous motion of water traveling against gravity, even with the high winds. I mean, just for it to actually move upwards is really weird, and not just pool. But yeah, as we're going, that's the thing. I had never heard about the Ark of Gabriel until doing research for this and came across it but it's such a little known thing. I mean, there's rumored, like artistic, renderings of drawings, but there's not anything kind of like the Ark of the Covenant. You don't have these classical drawings. So there's not really anything I can just say, oh, go look at this site. They got a picture of it. Mm-hmm. But it's just rumored to be a similar style object. But unlike the Covenant, this is one that has more of a destructive pattern. And that is the Ark of Gabriel.
So that is currently in Antarctica right now.
And that's the rumor. It's currently being held in this Holy Trinity Church, which is on St. George Island.
St. George Island.
Yeah, I think double check that. Make sure.
Wow.
I've got that correct. Yeah, King George Island. Sorry, King George Island near Bellinghausen Station, which is a Russian research station in Antarctica. So so this isn't something that you can just unannounced just show up and say, knock on the door, like, hey, I want to check it out.
Right. Wow.
And like I said,
what better place to put it, because Antarctica, similar to the moon. So I'm sure we'll touch on this topic in November when we do that show. But all these theories are centered around these places that are so inaccessible to almost everyone. Mm-hmm. Sure, some people can go to Antarctica and to the moon, but we can't go out investigating and so, let's go down to Antarctica and see what's down there and see if we can, spot the face in the salt rock or see those pyramids or go to that church. Nobody can just roll up to Antarctica and go exploring, or to the moon. So I think that's what really lends itself to some of these theories, is there is no way to confirm or deny them.
Yeah.
And then Ron's comment down there that he just put up. Yeah. It's one of those things. That's the thing. This wasn't like the Ark of the Covenant where priests would carry this thing. This was, like I said, this is by the descriptions of it. This is almost like the Archangel Gabriel imbued this thing as a failsafe. Like if the darkness takes hold and can't be, it is to be triggered. So this isn't like the Ark where somebody's just going to carry it around as a blessing, for the Lord's people. This one was more of a device where, at all costs don't encounter this. This isn't something, think of it like a nuclear power plant. You don't want to go down into the chamber.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this is.
Which there's a lot of research compelling, excuse me, that says the Ark of the Covenant was a nuclear generator.
Exactly.
So it's right in line in those angel wings. That's where the energy builds up, and it takes us back to our friend Steven Spielberg, who seems to be in the know about many things. Again, looking at Marzulli's research and just growing up into this in the past decade, that shot of the crate at the end of Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
and they pull back and there's just an entire warehouse. It's right in line with Where's the secret stuff? I've read some interesting books on the Smithsonian. I'm going to weave it into the Stanton Chronicles. The dude that gave the money was English. It was very odd. There were weird rules. Smithsonian is an odd gatekeeper institution. Craig, that is so cool.
I forgot a critical piece. I apologize. So it's like this ark is forbidden to be used until the resurrection day. That was what. So it's buried in an altar within the place of worship. The angels, of angels before the creation of man. So this is one, like I said, this isn't something that's just supposed to be. Like I was saying, I just forgot to put that. It's forbidden to use until resurrection day. I forgot about it. So here, okay, continue on. Sorry, I left out a critical piece. I apologize. I was too excited.
And then again, compelling UFO activity at Mecca. I mean, one of the most amazing things is that thing that hovers and then shoots right up. Obviously not swamp gas, a sand crane, a trick of the eye, a weather balloon, as we say in our opening.
And that was filmed from 3 different angles too.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yeah, and people's responses to it. So it takes us back to where maybe these stargates are. It was one that we didn't talk about is, let me get this right. It's the HARP station, which is in Alaska, right? To Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor.
What? The 2 non-contiguous states of the United States. Very interesting to think, and HARP could juice that thing up and power it, because there seems to be, and maybe we can move into this now, there seems to be some weird electromagnetic, like I want to go into Travis Taylor mode now, but there are weird electromagnetic anomalies all throughout Antarctica. If you guys have stuff on that, start us off. I certainly do. It's very interesting, but
I think I have so Wilkes Land, does that sound
familiar? Yeah.
Is a portal, is my note. To like a wormhole from point A to point B, because of a magnetic anomaly that exists there.
I tried to correlate the sightings of what countries, the UFO sightings, with the portals. But I didn't quite get it all drilled down exactly right. Of course, I didn't,
They don't want you to. But that sounds awesome. Lake Vostok, okay? Here's a really odd story. We're listening to George Knapp on Coast to Coast AM probably 2 years ago. And he has this Russian scientist on, who's now they're saying through the miracle of Disney CGI that those campers that got crushed, it was simply like an avalanche, and they used Disney CGI to simulate that because it's perfect avalanche CGI. He says, this same scientist, now it was weird, they had a catastrophic communication failure. It never, I don't think, happened on Coast to Coast. They start out the interview and suddenly it's gone. George, Coast to Coast can't connect with this Russian. The Russian can't connect with them. So he comes back on. They make a big deal out of it. He says in Lake Vostok, now, 2.2 miles below the surface of Lake Vostok are strange magnetic anomalies that indicate the presence of metals, maybe a craft, maybe a base. It sounds like we're at the bottom of a well, C1 or whatever on Oak Island, but there are these magnetic anomalies.
Skinwalker.
Or Skinwalker, right.
Yeah.
That was my whole Travis Taylor thing. 1957, the Russians start a research base at this Lake Vostok. Now, Lake Vostok is not small. It's about the size of Lake Ontario. It's a little smaller, and it happens to be the 6th largest lake in the world, under the ice in Antarctica. Very interesting. Not nefarious, not a fringe theory, but it's there. In 2019, a Russian researcher tells George Knapp, so that's what it was, that a Russian sub had been attacked 2 miles below the surface, by some kind of creature. This was his big news that has been really, really suppressed. So, so what happens with Lake Vostok? Very interesting. It gets taken over by the United States. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory takes over the research station, but then it is given to the defense contractor Leidos, which is formerly SAIC, SAIC. These are some of the same players involved with the airline, flying to the weird places in Nevada, New Mexico, all very exciting. Then you move to Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. That's also been there since 1957. Okay? In 2006, their lead doctor gets very sick. So do 12 private contractors from Raytheon, another defense contractor operating in Antarctica, defense contractor. So this is a very interesting thing. The replacement doctor, they have transcripts of communication. She is told, fill your pockets with salt. That is what she is told. Right. What does fill your pockets with salt mean? Yes, April,
Yes,
you nailed it.
She nailed it.
She's on that stuff. Radiation. Fill your pockets with salt is nuclear code for taking iodine tablets to shield yourself after exposure to radiation. But here's the weird thing, folks. No nuclear devices at all are allowed on Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. In 2011, 5 years later, Lockheed takes over the research station at Amundsen Scott, but they hire a ton of Raytheon employees. So it's kind of like, only. We're not Monsanto anymore because we're blah, 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 but we make all the same crap and, have all the same employees. But Monsanto went bye-bye. Nobody like it. We go bye-bye. April got a little insider information, which is very, very cool. They told her, which is very neat. So sorry, I went on because I get excited. I'm known for it. But yeah. Anybody know anything about the missing film crew in 2002?
No.
That was really interesting.
You want to take that?
So I tried to do some research on this, and it's one of those things.
It's scrubbed.
Yeah, you can't find anything. There's nothing.
Did you guys find that about a lot of things about Antarctica? So you hear this rumor or this thing totally. You can't find anything but debunking on the internet. Like usually there's the debunkers, but there's the people who have some kind of website, disclosure.org or something. I'm just making that up. Apologies if that's a real thing and maybe we should go there. But
this is a subject. When you find something, you need to screenshot it and keep it. Yep. Because I've mentioned it a couple times, and I think I mentioned it to you guys too, possibly. Years ago, I remembered somebody talking about it, that one of the research stations had a plaque dedicating for observation of the enemy.
Wow!
And on Antarctica.
Yeah, in Antarctica, and so this wasn't like enemy is Cold War enemy. This was dedicated to the observation of the enemy. So it was one of those, and I can't find it anymore. It's like there's not. You type in anything plaque, for, there's nothing. It's one of those. As I've done these research, as you find stuff, notate it, take it down, copy it, print it out, whatever. Keep it in a little file, because there's a good chance as things are pieced together, it's going to get scrubbed.
Yeah, exactly. So, Tanya, go ahead, and I'm going to find the source material to tell people.
Yeah. So. November 2002, a film crew goes down to Antarctica. They're doing a documentary, and they say they're looking for alien civilizations that have disappeared, and they just disappear. I mean, they just vanish. And a Navy SEAL rescue team supposedly, and again, the only thing you can find is that it's been debunked, but that they found footage from ancient structures that the film crew had taken. And then the footage that really belonged to the production company,
of course,
is not being released by the Navy.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ongoing, it's Atlantis TV, folks, and they are suing the government currently. This has been 19 years now. They're still trying to get this footage. If you type into YouTube, over the Antarctic ice wall, a film crew disappears forever. That is the title of the video. Okay. I don't think I have a date, but Ton, we were doing this research probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, this was probably a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
let's see. Watching.
It was after Joshua Cutchin was on Three Beards podcast. My notes are dated July 7th, so it couldn't have been more than a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And a little plug there. See what I did, brother? Okay. The structures that they filmed, I know, I'm good. The structures that they filmed are 2 miles down. The structures are 2 miles down. I mean, it's everywhere. It was all over Linda Moulton Howe's documentary. 2 miles down is a 60-acre. I think we all watched that. You want to go back and talk about that? Yeah. Drill down on some of that, because it's. I know. I always bring up my litmus test, which is Ingo Swann's penetration. This documentary is like, if we take this SEAL and we take this Marine and we believe what they're telling us, oh man, there is all manner of solar wind comes into play. Oh, Mama Mua. No. I'm learning it.
Uma Mau Mau.
Uma Mau Mau Bow Wow. Yeah, it's like a 1950s song. Is a derelict spacecraft, and we have, a space force that has been on that ship. Man, April's nailing it. We got to send April some kind of prize. Sounds like the underground civilizations. Yeah, I think that's where we're going with
April,
a lot of this.
Message us, PM us your address. We're sending you something.
Yeah, we're sending you something nice. Yeah. Okay, so, and the team gets nothing. I don't know, it's terrible, but
just fame.
Satisfaction, we were here.
Oh, from your mouth to God's ears, if he's in control of that thing. And if any of the Graham people are watching, look, we're popular. Help us out. Okay, right. So alien structures with hieroglyphs and symbols 2 miles below the surface. I mean, and these are all coming from very different sources. And it just kept happening. 2 miles below the surface. We talked about moon, Mars rock. It's very hard to find, but it's out there. There's a 2012 Google Earth image, which seems to show a 14-mile wide structure that looks as though it was partially airbrushed out. Have you guys seen that? It's like a really weird ridge. It dominates the landscape of this photo.
Yep.
Because NASA spent years mapping that area. I have the name of the code somewhere, but someone else pick up. I'll find it.
Where that made me think of also the iceberg that's like a perfect rectangle, and there's like 2 of them, but one's more perfect than the other one. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Have you guys seen that?
And that's kind of like what Craig was saying. Nature abhors a straight line and,
yeah,
45-degree angles.
And they're saying yes, but it looks like if you were to take, okay, this is going to sound really weird. I hardly drink beer, but I'm thinking of like when you would buy 4 6-packs and they would come sort of in that low carton. If you were to take that and make like ice sculptures out of it, but giant size, that's what these things, it looks like someone took a razor blade and shaved the 4 sides of this thing. Craig, did you find it?
I'm going to make everybody.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's 2 of them.
Yeah, and one is more perfect Like, I think that's the really perfect one.
Yeah.
And the other one is a little less perfect, but
Try to go slow so don't make everybody dizzy.
Everybody's a critic.
I don't know. That was just weird to me. I don't even know what I think about it. It's just that I thought it was very bizarre.
And again, they're explaining it away. Yeah, pyramids happen naturally in nature all the time. Don't worry about it.
Falls off perfectly like this.
Oh yeah,
it's fine.
I don't know, something to do with a sand crane drunk on swamp gas chips off the sides of these things and makes them totally rectangular. I love it. I'd love to have one of those as a pet for my TikTok channel. Yeah, interesting. So, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, if we're going back to the Linda Moulton Howe thing and the structure with the basalt doors, something else about that I thought was really interesting is that there was light, but that they couldn't determine any source for the light.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And it would go off and on as they walked.
Yeah.
And how the room was how many acres across, and it took them like 20 minutes to get across the room. And then they saw all the ramps that go everywhere.
62 acres, this structure. It's a room illuminated by lime green light. So phosphorescent sounds like. It's minus 40 degrees outside, but this seal says that it's 68 to 72 degrees inside the structure.
Right.
62 acres, walls 18 to 30 feet thick. What the heck do you need walls 30 feet thick for? What are you trying to keep in there or keep out?
Well, it's frozen outside. You gotta.
Yeah. I guess that's where you start to heat that thing up with a little lime green something. And it's supposedly one of 6 structures. That's massive.
Yeah, I would not be the least bit surprised because there's huge geothermal activity on Antarctica. So it is easily. I mean, if anybody has ever, I'm from up north, Oregon. And so, you'd get really cold, and that was one of the things like survival. You dig yourself an ice cave. If anybody's ever done an ice cave, you can have a little fire with a thermal blanket, and you stay really warm. You're completely surrounded by ice. So it's a weird phenomenon. So it is easily possible that you could have, like the reports that some of these leaks have come out, that there's entire ecosystems, plant life and everything, because down there, because they're it's in this perfect upper 60s to mid 70 degree temperature range, and it's perfect for growth. I mean, everybody's walking around in basic t-shirts and shorts down underneath, like you said, miles of ice. And so I'm whether it's aliens or whether it's human, I'm a believer, especially I don't have any doubts that that's actually the case, that there is something down here, because it's incredibly possible. I mean, you can do it just as a survival situation.
Now, I will sweeten the pot a little. And this, I don't believe, is from Linda Moulton Howe's documentary. I think I found this someplace else. There are cave systems that were produced by underground volcanoes. So if you could tap into that energy, oh my gosh, could you imagine harnessing the power of a volcano? That would be pretty amazing. There's a rumor that the United States Air Force shipped a nuclear-powered drill to Antarctica to bore tunnels. Now that's interesting. That to me, I'm going to put something out there. That to me flies in the face of these alien bases with powerful beings and stargates, and what are you boring into? And are you provoking? Like, what do you do? You guys see what I mean? I look at that, and that runs counter to. It sort of runs counter to the narrative, although it's just another rumor.
And that's similar to work that they did, what the government did in Greenland. And I can't remember the exact context for what they were doing, but the Camp Century in Greenland, where they were boring those long tunnels with escape hatches, and I don't even know what they were doing in there, but it was like that was practice for what they were going to do in Antarctica. And that
you think those were originally just practicing making ice bases and stuff like that, but they were like proof of concept models for ice bases.
Yeah.
Right, and they were talking about that was linked somehow to that Operation Icebox, where they were planning to make Antarctica into like a huge freezer for food to be able to be stored for 100 years was their goal, to see if they could make that sustainable for
And that was Project Iceworm too. That was Project Iceworm is what was going on in Greenland.
Yeah,
that's what that project was called. Yeah,
okay. News at Camp Century.
And because we haven't mentioned their poor guys in almost an hour, really high-tech underground drilling was really, really innovated by the Nazis. They had a lot of underground factories and different things they were doing. Mm-hmm. So it all comes back to this weird, we talked about HARP. Both the SEAL and the Marine say that you could access these bases 2 miles down via submarine without decompression.
Right. You could just walk out on the loading dock.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is really interesting.
Were these the two people who also, or was one of them the one that was on that flight to go pick up those scientists?
No.
That was a different one.
The ramp going down the ground? Okay.
Yeah, that was a different one, which I love that. Like,
I love that one.
Yeah, there's a huge Navy SEAL presence there, which again, hostile territory, very large. But I mean, a group of scientists just wander out across Antarctica and get lost for 2 weeks. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
And
they come back.
Oh, go ahead.
They come back and nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah, everybody or is allowed to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because didn't the pilot was trying to ask them, just how are you, and simple questions, and nobody would say a word.
Yeah. And they looked terrified, and they got on the plane early to get out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And I think didn't they leave all their equipment behind, and they went on back to New Zealand, and then had to get their equipment back.
According to my notes, the gear was confiscated and it was kept at McMurdo. So again, did they have camera footage? Did they? I mean, you got to be shooting everything. Very, very odd. But yeah, this huge hole in the ice that they flew over. It was a no-fly zone, and they're like, nope, lives. We're breaking the no-fly zone, and they see this giant hole.
Right.
And I would kind of, in the thing is, for anybody that's like the naysayers, like that, there's nothing down there. For me, it's one of those, like, just going back to those scientists, if there is nothing there, what could possibly freak, individuals out? I'm just taking, like, take right now, the 6 of us. We go down there, everybody's like, there's nothing down there. All 6 of us come back absolutely terrified. All of our gear has been confiscated. We're not allowed to talk about it. And you can see that we basically all have PTSD, and fear. And it's a consensus across the whole board. It's not just like, Craig went psychotic, and we had to get out of there. Everybody's the same thing. It's like, do you want to go back there? No, absolutely. They're terrified. And then, so when you have that commonality, that leads, it has to lead you to more questions of, there's got to be something other than just a polar bear, some just animal thing. There has to be something that is not of the normal, because anybody that's a reasoned scientist, you're going to expect cold conditions. You're going to expect these things, the animals that are there. But for all 6 of us to come back petrified and just fleeing for our lives, this is something that is, I'm not sure, can you say alien? But it's something that they've never seen before. And it was, so there has to be something. So for anybody that's like, there's nothing down there, well, explain then what happened to these people.
Yeah.
Because they all have the same story. I can't talk about it. Freaked me out.
Yeah.
And wasn't and I always get the 2 stories mixed up because they're similar, but the story of the pilot who flew over the giant hole that had like what looked like the ramps going down into the ground in the no-fly zone, and they picked up whoever it was they were going to get. I thought it was someone who
he was having a heart attack, and they were taking him to get medical.
Yeah, and so they picked him up, the person who was having a medical emergency, and before they came to fly back, they got word from control center, do not fly in the no-fly zone. And it was a matter of life and death for this person that they were picking up. They said, absolutely do not fly over there again. And so he didn't. And I think, did the person die on the plane before they got back?
Yeah. I mean, I want to circle back to Buzz Aldrin because this is where it gets, to me, this is maybe the fringiest thing of all. But Buzz says weird stuff and then changes his mind. You know what I mean? He questions some of the aspects of the moon mission, and then punched a guy in the face because the guy was like, "Hey, the moon landing was fake." So Buzz has been historically all over the map, as opposed to Edgar Mitchell, who started the Institute for Noetic Sciences, said something really strange has happened. We need to figure it out, and has been very subtle. Buzz is like a big, larger than life guy. But I want to go back when you're talking about people who are traumatized, and Tanya, you always talk about this. If you watch the press conference before Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and it was Michael Collins, right? Was the third one? He always gets short shrift. If you watch the press conference before they went to space and you watch the press conference after they got back, these are much different dudes. Syntax is different. Facial expressions are different. Personalities are different. Something happened up there that they weren't allowed to talk about, I think, and it really bothered them.
And I think, Neil, if I remember correctly, it was only Neil Armstrong who was addressing the press. The other two just sat there and they looked like they had lost their best friend. I'm going to try to find before and after pictures so that when we have the moon discussion in November, we can share those.
Yeah, that's worth watching.
It's very, very different. And I always say, here are these men, they're full of bravado. Hey, we're going to be the first people to step foot on the moon. They're very excited. They're all, energized, and they come back and they look like they're about to cry.
Right. So, Buzz, now, 2016, there are these rumors that he took photos of pyramidal structures in Antarctica that had precise edges, too precise to be natural, and that he supposedly tweeted, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." Now, of course, that's rumor because it's been scrubbed, and nobody, like Craig said, nobody, I guess, thought to take a screenshot of it. But then promptly deleted the tweet. Suddenly he's airlifted out.
What happened a couple months prior to that?
What?
The Russian naval vessel from Jeddah bringing the supposed Ark of Gabriel to Antarctica. I didn't include it because it's Snopes, the official, debunkers, have called this fake, but it was one of those, it's rumor thing. But if you look at the same time in the time frame, it's the same thing. The Patriarch has come down here in 2016 in February, and then not even just, I think, I'm trying to think, it was somewhere around later that fall or something, like when Buzz Aldrin was down there. So he's down there during this time of supposedly when the Ark of Gabriel. Yeah. December. So this is all within that year of the discovery in here, and he's saying we're all in danger. It's evil itself. So I didn't put that in there just because I wanted, I wasn't, because there's so much, it's fake. No, I think it was real. It's just disinformation to make everybody just believe, that this was a complete fabrication. But yeah, so it's kind of fits right there in that time frame. So that's.
With that time frame, I have a note, and full disclosure, I don't know what this note means, but it's associated with from when we were watching the Linda Moulton Howe documentary, and it jumped out at me because my note says, in 2016, aliens blocked a solar flare? ? Oh
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You remember that? I don't remember the context for that.
Yeah. And they're saying that it was that craft that came out of the orbit of Saturn that blocked it.
That's right.
That knocked a hole in the ring, right? Tore a hole in the ring?
Yeah, like you can see it on the photograph where something's coming off on one of those rings.
That it was going to be, maybe we can fold some of that stuff into the moon stuff, because Oumuamua, right? They talked about some weird stuff. I really want to we got about 15 minutes left. I really want to talk about Highjump.
Mhm.
I have kind of a specific reason.
Disservice not to.
Yeah. So somebody want to take us through the nuts and bolts of Highjump other than me?
Emily and Devin, why don't you guys take that one? If you guys got that.
Okay. So that was the operation led by General Byrd, right? To Antarctica. Admiral, sorry. To do like reconnaissance basically for Nazi bases and weapons.
Well, it was originally put forward as like a massive training exercise. It was post World War II. But they committed an awful lot of resources and troops right after a giant major world war.
Right. Another story is that it was coastal mapping, but they folded in resources from Australia and UK. So yeah, continue on.
Right, and I think that it sounded like, because we just watched this, I think it was yesterday. There's a documentary on YouTube, and it showed clippings from newspapers at the time, around that time, that it was it was a very legit concern that there were Nazi bases in Antarctica that needed to be found and dismantled. And so that was kind of common knowledge at the time. Until recently, I'd never heard that. And so it makes sense that they would send, they sent, 4,700 troops down there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Multiple warships.
13 ships, an aircraft carrier, a submarine, 6 R4Ds, which were made by Douglas, fitted with cameras and magnetometers to look for hollow spaces. You Hyperborean hollow Earth people, this is your in. And then they were supposed to stay. I saw, and some people dispute this, right? The debunkers dispute it. They were supposed to stay for 8 months. They lasted 8 weeks.
Yep.
That is a big difference. 1/10 the time for a massive, massive operation. And I don't know the source material, but this kind of got us thinking, and it was part of the reason I think that I wanted to talk about Antarctica. But Admiral Byrd, there's several weird things in his journal, which I think his son brought forth after his death. He said that in his final flyover, his plane was hijacked for 3 hours by German-speaking Nordics, and he was taken into a parallel dimension. Now, this is a highly decorated, very serious military man, an admiral. The rumors of what happened and why they returned after 8 weeks was that there were 5 disc-shaped objects that decimated his force. It was a mix of ETs and Nazis. They suffered 50% casualties, lost half the aircraft, which is also 50% loss. And he told President Truman upon his return that what they encountered showed mercy.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. There was also a second operation nobody seems to talk about in 47-48 called Operation Windmill. So again, in fair reporting of what we're supposed to be doing here, my note is, if you got your asses that badly kicked in 46, why do you go back with a smaller force a year later? That's a big question.
Yeah.
That's a big question. So here's, guys, what really gets me. Who authorized Operation Highjump? Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal. 6 weeks later, the National Security Act was signed, which created the CIA. James Forrestal then was moved from Secretary of the Navy, which was no longer a cabinet position, to become Secretary of Defense, which was a newly created system under the new organizational chart. On September 24th, 1947, he writes a memo, Truman does, to James Forrestal, ex-Secretary of Navy, authorized Highjump, and it creates Majestic 12, that old chestnut. So if you look at the list of the original Majestic 12, James Forrestal is on it. This is also the time of the fabled SOM-1 or SOM 101 manual on procedures for alien contact. We're starting to get a picture here. When my book comes out, I'm going to lay all this out. Okay. Supposedly it is said that Forrestal at Wright Field, where you're going in about a month, 5 weeks, who was very against secrecy, sees an alien body and supposedly has a physiological response. Okay, so this all begins in 47. In 1949, what becomes of Forrestal? He runs through the Pentagon yelling, "We're being invaded and we can't stop them," after he reads a top secret report from Air Force intelligence. They take him to Bethesda, to the National Navy Medical Center. 5 days later, his brother's not allowed to see him. His brother's supposed to go pick him up, says there's nothing wrong with him. And he jumps from a 16th floor window. The ex-Secretary of Navy, who became the Secretary of Defense, who is removed because he's against secrecy. He's on Majestic 12. He's seen alien bodies. And you can't tell me that if this guy is that crazy, they're not watching him to keep him from jumping out of a 16th floor window. Boom, mic drop.
They watched him. They watched him jump out the window.
Yeah.
They pushed him.
They
threw him out.
Yeah, they watched him. All right.
Just like poor Frank. Just like poor Frank. What's his name in Operation Wormwood and that horrible Sidney Gottlieb dosing government employees with LSD unbeknownst to them. But anyway, this is the kind of stuff that ties a lot together for me. Forrestal was way in the know, and he comes to bad ends. I mean, Secretary of Defense. Secretary of Defense. They've gotten a lot more clever over the decades, I think.
Crazy how similar that is to what just happened with Buzz Aldrin and Tweet, and then getting rushed off to New Zealand.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it back around.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pattern, right? The whole thing with Jessup and the Philadelphia experiment, and asphyxiates himself in his car, commits suicide. Weird stuff. So I wanted to come back around to that. Because Bird is talking in his journal, Forrestal is saying they're here, Buzz is saying it's here and it's evil. These are high level people. This isn't if Joey all of a sudden runs out in the street and claims all this stuff. These are very important people, very connected. So, want to do summation?
I mean, you don't get to that point by being insane.
Right. I mean, Forrestal's brother was all set to pick him up. It was enough is enough. Tomorrow morning, I'm coming to get my brother. This is ridiculous. And that night, he jumps out the window. So it is time for our summations, guys. I think we're just going to go round robin. So Devin, we'll start with you, Emily, Lori, Craig, Tanya. And I've already said too much. I'm going to be watching my back. But anyway, Devin, what's summation? Antarctica.
There has to be something there, and just simply for, this is kind of the thing with me when I talk about stuff. You follow the money, and really the biggest money expenditures have happened down there. And something that really comes to mind too, to go back to the Nazis, is how many resources they devoted before, during, and even to a point after the war. Right before they invaded Poland, they had multiple missions down there, tons of manpower. During the war, right up to the end, they were sending submarines down there, building bases. So you don't invest that much, especially with what's going on around you, if it's not worth it. Absolutely.
Nice. Emily?
And that ties into, how many countries have gone down. I mean, Antarctica is inhospitable. What are you going to do there? How is it going to be valuable to you? And, what kind of effort and resources you're going to have to put into getting anything done there? And how many countries have signed to, be part of that coalition to have access to Antarctica And there's always people down there, and not a lot, but there's always a presence there. So something is there aside, I think, from just research of, wildlife and the environment. I think there's more to it, and it's so remote and inaccessible that anything could be there. And we would never know. There's no way that we can know.
Yeah. Lori?
Oh, so, it is so guarded and so protected. There's something there. Just without question. We didn't even get to the people saying, oh, yeah, I have talked to the aliens, and there are some that are for us and some that are against us. And after I watched that video, I texted Joey. I was like, I am freaking out. And it will rock your world. It will rock your world and make you think of things differently, completely differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Craig?
Follow the money.
Yeah.
It's you. That's the famous saying. If you really want to figure out what's going on, follow where the dollars are going. If there's nothing there, what is Lockheed Martin doing down there?
Right.
Yeah.
They're not in the business of altruistic. I just want to see what's underneath an ice cap.
Right. Raytheon, Lycos. These are
you have all these companies that are they just keep changing hands, which means they're just, they're either okay, we've done our part, now it's your turn. They keep doing, because there's a consistent thing of defense contractors. Well, if you look at the treaty, that's explicitly against the treaty. There's to be no military, activity going on down here. Well, it's clearly military contractors are the ones that are doing all this stuff. They're not out there to study penguins. It's just you just follow it. I keep saying, for the people that are doubters on this thing, you have to look at some of these things, and just, even if you just take, everybody hates that Occam's razor, thing when people bring that up, but it's honestly, if you boil it down to some of the simplest things, follow the money is one of the best ways, and just look at the players in here. And even if you don't believe aliens, even if you don't believe these things, you have to at least ask the question of, why are they involved? Because they're not there for altruistic, just research. There's something that they're interested in. So you have to ask yourself, what? Why are they there? And if you get to those things, if you can start doing that, I bet you're going to come across some of the things we've already talked about. And then you're going to be like, I can't explain this. And that's where you need to find answers.
Right.
And so that's
right. Yeah, I follow the money, but there's also a Latin expression, and I've used it with some of you guys, cui bono, who benefits, which is exactly it. If you're throwing a ton of money at something, what is the benefit? What are you after? Miss Tanya, summation.
Yeah, just really along the same lines, but I was thinking too, along what you were saying, Craig, with the switching out of the defense contractors, changing hands. It's kind of like compartmentalization of the information, which Bob Lazar talks a lot about. That this guy can't know what this guy knows, and he can't know, and so it's just kind of like disseminating and compartmentalizing whatever it is that they're discovering.
I will throw out a fringe theory for you guys along those lines. And I said it to Tanya. Yeah. We just finished the second season of Skinwalker Ranch. I really applaud Brandon Fugal because they're doing crazy good experiments. They're researching it. It's a history Prometheus thing. So there's some sketchy stuff. But I have this weird theory. He kind of puts a little shade on Bigelow because he was so secretive and hoarded all his information.
Yeah.
But what if it was simply handed off and it's a bad cop, good cop kind of thing because it's so on the radar? Kelleher and Knapp's book, Ryan Skinner has disclosed so much stuff. A lot of the big radio shows have had ex-contractors on because look at some of the people. One of the colonels that was under or worked with Bigelow went on Brandon Fugal's show to talk about their portal research and how there were portals there. That's interesting. There are certain lines you don't cross unless you're supposed to cross them. And MUFON was left out of the cold, which I thought was very, very interesting. One last thing, folks, do some homework. In 1958, 3 nuclear bombs under Operation Argus were exploded over the South Atlantic. 38.5 degrees and 49.5 degrees south, several thousand kilometers north of Antarctica to the southwest of South Africa. They say that these were high altitude bursts. They could also be bombing Nazi bases in 1958. Finally going, we're not going to get them with a conventional assault, so we'll just bomb the place, which could have created some of these electromagnetic radiation signatures. Who knows? I don't know, but definitely check that out. Operation Argus.
Right.
And I want to say Oh, go ahead,
Oh, no.
Craig.
No, I was just going to say, I'd kind of meant, prior to the show, I talked to Joey about this. I theorized maybe that was the proverbial swatting at the hornet's nest to see what happens. By doing that, if you're going to elicit activity, I mean, you hit them with something that isn't just a little plane flying across. If you hit them with something big, then you're going to see if you have a reaction. So that was my theory, is like what that might have been behind.
Yeah, exactly.
We have
so
one tiny piece to that I think is interesting. Is that in August 1963 there was another large explosion in Antarctica that everybody was pointing the fingers at everybody else for what caused it, and I think we were blaming Russia and they were pointing the finger elsewhere. And I guess it was something that Kennedy kept trying to keep quiet at the time that it happened, because it was very controversial. Why are there explosions in Antarctica? That's not allowed. And then what happens 6 months after that? Kennedy is assassinated, and it's like the whole thing just disappeared and went away.
Yeah. There's a million reasons. There's a million, there's a list as long as your arm why Kennedy was assassinated. But one of them is because he was authorizing Russia and America to work in a joint space program after, some pretty crazy stuff started happening. So, and it's for another time, but I just think up here, everybody's working together and all the rest is geopolitics, corporate oligarchy, military, industrial intelligence complex, which, in talking to a colleague who's doing something really cool about the Hmong in Vietnam or in Laos being hired by the CIA, corporate oligarchy, military, industrial intelligence complex, comic. Yeah. So there it is. The whole thing is comic.
Wow.
So we're losing our internet speed. I think Facebook's trying to kick us off, but I'm getting messages that our thing, and we've actually gone 2 minutes over time. Thank you to Devin and Emily, to Lori. Lori, welcome to the RTC team.
Welcome.
Thank
It's
you.
so wonderful having you with us.
I love being here. Thank you.
Craig, thank you for the audience who is stuck with us. They were riveted. And our boss over at ERT Radio, you can hear episodes about 3 weeks old on ERT Radio, Ronald Toltivar. He says, great show, people. So we impressed the boss, which is good. You can also hear older shows on Patriot Radio on 8 p.m. on Friday nights. And Craig, your show gets rebroadcast there too. When is that?
That's Thursday nights at 10 p.m.
Yeah, so you can get a double dose.
Download that Zeno radio app.
You can get a whole lot of Craig on Thursday nights. You can watch this episode and then go over, watch that, watch his show. Craig, when is your show on Wednesdays?
Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time and 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's just you get a heavy dose of beard. That's awesome.
Yeah, nice. With his colleagues Austin and Chris. Guys, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Emily and Devin, of course, knew Rosemary 2 years ago. She passed, but she's still with us in many, many cool, exciting ways. She showed up with Bigfoot today, right? Can you tell them that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's hanging out with Bigfoot on the other side, which is pretty neat. Awesome. Audience, thank you. Join us next week when we go into the outer realms,
where the paranormal and the supernatural are just
the normal and the natural. Thanks, guys, for staying with us to the bitter end. Talk to everybody soon. Mr. Mark Eddy, our angel. Terrific show tonight. All the bosses are happy, Craig.
Awesome. Thanks, nice. Everybody.
All right. Take care.
How do do I get off this ride?
Everybody, thank you for watching. This is a great show. We'll be back for another one of these special ones here. So thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it. It was a fantastic time talking to everybody. Good night.
Thank you for doing that, Craig. We got booted out.
Yeah, I was looking
They
at it, like,
booted us out of our own show.
We're still live, and I'm like, they left. I'm like, all right.
I went to end the broadcast, and we got kicked out.
Let's do a little dance and entertain everybody.
Last night you couldn't get on. Tonight they won't let any of us leave. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks for closing up, brother.
You're welcome.
Bye.